Roman Josi gave an injury update, which could potentially impact some offseason decisions Barry Trotz will make with free agency in the draft. We're going to talk about that and discuss what Ryan O'Reilly's biggest regret is when it comes to the start of this terrible Predators season.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our Thursday episode this week, shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and, of course, our everydayers who are tuning in to talk all things Nashville Predators hockey. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingan, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, last Friday, Emma and I were among the media members that met with several of the Nashville Predators as they addressed the big season that wasn't. Today, we're going to hear from the captain, Roman Josi, who spent quite a bit of time talking about his season-ending injury. We're going to discuss how his health status could affect what Barry Trotz does this offseason. We are also going to hear from who I lovingly call the king of self-flagellation, Ryan O'Reilly, who speaks once again very openly about his regret when it comes to the Nashville Predators season. So a lot to get to, but first, Emma, I want to wish you a happy NFL draft day. Nashville Predators have the first pick in the NFL draft. May that speak life over the draft lottery for the Preds fans who could stand the first pick in the draft.
The Nashville Predators, aka the Tennessee Titans,
Yes.
the football Predators.
The football Predators.
Yeah.
Yes. You all go and check out Locked On Tennessee Titans, because of course they're going to have all your coverage in the Titans. Again, first pick in the NFL draft. I have been doing this has become a thing. It's like a slot machine in Vegas for me, Emma. I go to tankathon.com and I do the simulated draft lottery for the NHL. And I did it this morning 8 times. And it took 8 times for Nashville to get the first pick in the draft. Now, we all know that's not going to happen because in my simulated draft lottery, Chicago's 4th. Gary Bettman will never allow that. Philadelphia 5th, Boston 6th, Pittsburgh 9th. I think we all know those teams aren't going to get there. So if this is actually the way it comes up, Gary Bettman's going to be like reset, redraw. But yeah, just a little foretaste of the draft coming up in the football arena. Of course, Nashville has a lot they need to do when it comes to the hockey arena. And one of those decisions needs to be weighed out with the health status of Roman Josi. Roman Josi, of course, just played 53 games this season. He missed the last 25 games after being boarded by Sam Bennett. Freaking Sam Bennett in my invisible backpack of hockey grudges. You think we forget, but we don't. Just so you know, we keep score here at Locked On Predators. That was February 25th against the Florida Panthers. It was called a, quote, upper body injury. Emma, I think we all know at this point what that, quote, unquote, upper body injury means for Roman Josi. We're talking a concussion, friends. We did, of course, spend quite a bit of time talking with Roman Josi about his health status. So want to play for you a clip where he just sort of addresses what happened, where he was at, his recovery, and kind of long-term plans. So this is what Josi had to say about his health. Then we're going to come back and talk about his revelations.
Good. I'm feeling a lot better and, doing everything I can to obviously get better. And it's been getting better and better. Like I said, I'm progressing really well, and now we got a lot of time and keep getting better and better. And I'll definitely be playing when the season starts. With those things, you obviously want to be careful. And if I was healthy, I would have played, playoffs or not. And it was never what I wanted, just sit out the rest of the season. And if I felt like I was healthy to play, I would have played, even if it was with 10 games left or 5 games left. And but yeah, it was important for me to be healthy and get healthy. I'm working out and I'm riding the bike. We have a a kind of special rehab program. There's some other stuff I do for other things, like your eyes and everything, and so there's a whole program, there's a whole plan, and yeah, it's just kind of there to help you, get better and better, and sometimes it takes some time, and you got to be a little patient, but that's okay.
So Emma, a lot of conversation with Roman Josi about his health status. What was your biggest takeaway after we had a chance to talk with him?
I mean, like you said, we already knew it was a head injury. We also know that he has a history with head injuries, and you never want to mess with that. Like, there's certain injuries. That's why I didn't particularly care for the question, which, like, I understand why people ask it, but when he was asked, like, well, would you, if the team was in a different situation, like if there was playoffs involved, like, would you have pushed through it? And I think that there are certain injuries that you can push through. Like if you really need to, like maybe regular season, it's like, why don't risk it. But if it's playoffs and you have like, a fracture,
Put on your ankle that doesn't heal, Philip Forsberg.
like that, or like you have a small fracture or, something that you can like, yeah, it's playoffs, I'm going to push through it. With the head, that's not, and you don't just push through head injuries. Like you can't just do that. And so that's why I like didn't love that he was asked that question. Because your head, it doesn't just affect your athletic career, it affects you as your entire life, and it can have these long lasting effects beyond the time your career's over. So I think it's absolutely out of an abundance of caution, but in good reason, that he did not come back and play. And I'm glad that he made that distinction where he said, playoffs or not, if I had felt healthy, then I would come back. And I mean, it was the same kind of thing we saw with Mark Borowiecki a couple years ago, where he had the history of head injuries and then ultimately did make the decision to retire for that reason. And I think that that's why, because it was one of those where he was, I'm okay now, but the next head injury that I get could be it could kill me. That's where I think you're at. And so I think people wanted to make sure that Roman Josi wasn't at that point where it's like, I'm fine now, but if I get another one of these, and it doesn't seem like he's really there yet, which is positive. But I do think that it's, anyone asking like, well, if the team was doing better, he would have played. And I was like, I don't know, with a head injury, if you can do that. If you have like a broken finger or something, it's like you can play.
Muscle through that.
It's not pleasant, but you can do it. And it's not going to like affect your, like dramatically impact the rest of your life. But a head injury is different. And so that's what I think that, my biggest takeaway was.
I agree with you. For me, that was really interesting information to get. Like, look, it didn't matter where we were. I was not able to play down the stretch. And just, because it is a concussion, look, concussions are cumulative. If anybody, has ever had a concussion, I had one that I got from a takedown gone wrong in a grappling class, and it was massive. And the recovery is such a bizarre recovery compared to a broken bone, because it is not linear. It is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And it varies based on everything from sleep to what you do to what you visually take in. And, I love that he talked about, look, we have a very specific protocol and a recovery program for concussions, which they need, contrary to what maybe Gary Bettman wants people to believe. But Roman Josi was not able to play. And I like that. I appreciate that he came out and was upfront about that. It's interesting to me, especially because concussions are cumulative and because we know that this is not Roman Josi's first head injury. It makes me think, Emma, they've got to be keeping a very close eye on his recovery, because one of the big things that Barry Trotz has talked about is we need to get a right shot defenseman in the offseason, probably via free agency, to go with Roman Josi. But also, you look at this NHL draft and you have what could potentially be a superstar defenseman in Matthew Schaefer. Now, look, let's be clear. The Nashville Predators, their more immediate need on paper is a center, but knowing where Roman Josi is could affect what they do, because let's face it, like quite unlike my simulated lottery, the Predators probably aren't going to get the first pick. And if, they are at a point where they are faced with take the next best available versus pinpoint the position of center, if Schaefer is there, they want to know, like, hey, how is Roman Josi really going to be doing long term when they have to make that decision? I think it all plays in together. Yosi's health is a really important piece of what's going to happen for the Predators this offseason, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, his health status is one thing. His age is another. We know that he's not, I'm not saying he's ancient, but he's not getting any younger. And so they're very aware of that. But this could be a matter of like, okay, how do we have 3 more years of Roman Josi, or do we have 1 more year of Roman Josi? Like
Right.
that kind of thing. So I think it is good to see and to hear that they are monitoring that very closely, and that he, it does, the worst case seems to have been avoided for now.
Yeah. Coming up, we are going to hear from serial winner Ryan O'Reilly. He's another veteran who did not necessarily have the season he wanted this go round, and of course, always one for personal accountability. He shared one of his big regrets when it came to how this season started. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Friends, the NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on all that action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it is picking your favorite team or diving into those player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many different ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after that game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out, friends. Head on over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, Emma, we've been around Ryan O'Reilly long enough to know exactly what we're going to get at the end of the season media availability in the second worst season in franchise history. And our good friend Ryan O'Reilly, he did not disappoint. Of course, it was another frustrating year. He was not terrible when it comes to, near his career average stats. He had 21 goals, 53 points. His 82 game career average, 22 goals, 59 points. But he was coming off of that really big 69 point season last year and was expected to kind of be the guy, one of the guys that kind of takes the next step. Here's what Ryan O'Reilly had to say. He talked about what he learned this season, and in this, he shares his biggest early season regret. This is what he had to say.
I think for myself, still kind of digesting it. I think there was times earlier in the year there was opportunity to kind of, take control and have more dialogue, more conversation, kind of step up and do something I don't think I did enough. Which I'm disappointed in, but I think I know there was opportunity, and talking to other guys too, I think there was opportunities where we could have came together, and unfortunately we didn't. And yeah, there's lessons in that, and as a group too, I think it's we throughout the when we dug ourselves a hole, it's we wanted to deviate, and at times we got kind of on our own page and try to do it our own way, and as you can see, it doesn't work. You can't build anything when, we're all going different directions. And, again, that's on myself. It's on us leadership group. We're mature, we're experienced, we've been through a lot. We should have, been a lot better in that way. So that's something too we haven't really, as a leadership group, I think we will obviously get together and talk more about that and find ways, but definitely falls on us, myself. There's some changes that we have to be able to make on the fly and hold each other accountable, and if we're doing it, the rest will follow.
I think it is so interesting that, of course, he immediately, when you say, what did you learn this season? He goes into, here's the list of things that I didn't do as he is wont to do. But I think it's so interesting that he really regrets not speaking up and having some dialogue and conversation earlier in the season. And I think that's something that you overlook when you add the pieces that Nashville added, when you add star players who have been Stanley Cup winners, Conn Smythe winners, captains of their team, and you bring them in, there is an odd figuring out of how does that leadership history blend into the current leadership, and who speaks up and who says what, and how does that dynamic all work. And I think it's interesting that Ryan O'Reilly says, we should have had dialogue. I should have had dialogue and discussions earlier in the season. I thought that was so interesting. And there's a lot of problems with the early start of the season, but I think it's interesting that that's the one that Ryan O'Reilly was like, you know what? Wish I would have done that.
Yeah, because I think, there was a lot of when things did start going south for this team. Of course, that's when the blame game started among, fans and everyone else, like, oh, it's because of this, it's because of this. And I saw a lot of like, well, obviously the pieces that they brought in the offseason completely destroyed the chemistry in the locker room. And it's like, no, they didn't destroy it, but they altered it. And that's real and that's expected. I mean, you don't want Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea to come in and disappear. Like,
Right.
you bring them in for that. And so things are going to change, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. I mean, the on ice product was bad, and maybe this was part of it. But I do think that, like, there's a little bit of like, if you are Ryan O'Reilly, like, yes, you are more tenured in Nashville than a Steven Stamkos, but Steven Stamkos comes with all of this, the 2 Stanley Cups and the everything that comes with it. I mean, O'Reilly has a cup too, but still, it's like, I wonder if
shots.
Yes, and I wonder if there's some kind of like, maybe even unconscious like deference there, that it's like, oh, I don't, it's like, you don't, I don't know, like, you don't tell the Pope how to pray. Like, I don't know if it's just like, well, he's Steven Stamkos. I'm not even saying that O'Reilly deliberately thought that,
Right.
Or consciously thought that, but I think to a degree it's kind of there.
And we talked about that when it came to the on ice struggles for this team early. It's like, were players subconsciously, truly subconsciously deferring to, well, we brought in these superstars, so I don't have to be the guy that steps up, or I should make the pass to Steven Stamkos because I am Luke Evangelista and I am not that. And I think there was a subconscious on ice issue with that. Like, how do these pieces fit in with who we were? And there's always going to be an adjustment, but especially when you bring in players like this. But then you forget that there is that off ice, like you said, this subconscious deferment of, when do I speak up to this future Hall of Famer and say, hey, or when do I, how do I figure out where my voice is in a locker room that just got 2 more very experienced voices in it? And so exciting when you get these signings, because we look at the statistics, but there is also this sifting out of on ice dynamics and leadership dynamics. And maybe we underestimated what that was going to feel like in the locker room, how it was going to take to sift that out. And I think it's interesting that Ryan O'Reilly's like, I wish I would have spoken up sooner, because I do think conversations like that earlier I don't know that it would have saved the season because they started 0-5. I mean, at 0-5, that's when you're like, ooh, maybe we need to have a conversation, but I don't really know how to go about it. And that's already a little bit of a hitch in the giddy up. But maybe harder conversations earlier could have turned some things around for the Predators. I'm not saying that if Ryan O'Reilly had just spoken up, this team would be a Stanley Cup contender, even though that's probably what he goes to bed at night thinking.
I was going to say he's probably saying that, but we're not.
He is wearing the burden. I also thought it was interesting. He pointed out, like, when things struggled, they kind of went on their own page. And we saw that. Like, it was like all of the sudden you have players who say, oh, well, I'm going to have to be the guy that leads this. Well, yes and no. Like, the team had to figure it out together. And sometimes when you have quote unquote superstars on, on a team, or you have players that are used to being the guy, you've got to figure out, like, how am I the guy on this team? How am I still doing what's best for this team without trying to save the day? And Nashville struggled with that. I think we saw it up and down the lineup. I thought that was really interesting from Ryan O'Reilly. Of all of the things, he's like, I wish I would have spoken up sooner. And maybe Ryan O'Reilly talk about some other people, criticize some other people. Doesn't all have to be on you, friend. Just throwing it out there.
It'll never happen.
It will never happen. Well, like, if you look up personal accountability in the dictionary, it's just a picture of Ryan O'Reilly's face.
Yeah.
Without his tooth. I'm just
everything is his fault.
Everything. When they chant in Bridgestone Arena, it's all your fault, at the opposing goaltender, Ryan O'Reilly takes a minute to soak it in.
Oh, he eats that for breakfast. He's like, yes, this fuels me.
Yes, it is. It is. Bless. Go to Turks and Caicos and, like, loosen that burden, Ryan O'Reilly. We heard an awful lot all season long about expectations. And in this end of season press conference, these players talked about expectations and disappointments. Ryan O'Reilly made a really interesting observation in his talk when it came to managing pressure and expectations of the season. We're going to share that comment coming up. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all of my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is so easy to lose track financially. But that is where Monarch Money comes in. It is your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, and your spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever with Monarch Money. You can track shared and personal accounts. You can set financial goals together, and you can stay on the same page without all the added stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, Emma, they're no joke. Expectations were very high for this Nashville Predators season based on what they did last offseason. My first question before we get to Ryan O'Reilly's comments, do you feel like the front office, the media, whether we're talking, local media, national media, do you feel like there was a good job of setting accurate expectations ahead of the season for the Nashville Predators, or did they just get too big to kind of be realistic?
I mean, it's hard to say now, because at the time we would have said, yes, like, playoffs, that's realistic. That's not too big. But now, of course, it looks like way too big. But I do think, just from, not so much from the local media, but talking to people in other markets in the hockey world, people being like, what happened? Like, what what happened with Nashville? Like, they were
We
supposed to
get
be
a lot of
so
that.
good. We get a lot of that.
We
It's
get
like
a
they were
lot of that.
supposed to be, and like, so it seemed like everyone was pretty aligned in the belief that like they were gonna challenge for, you know, maybe not a Stanley Cup this year, but they could challenge for, top of the Central. They could challenge for a lot of things. And so now I think everyone's like, were those expectations too big? But I don't know, at the time it didn't seem like it.
It didn't seem ridiculous when you looked at that roster. And yes, Barry Trotz kept saying, we don't play fantasy hockey. It's not what's on paper. But when you looked at what's on paper, you did get a visual of potential. And I don't think it was outside the realm of reality to say this is a playoff team. And yet here we are, friends, in case you were wondering. It's been 84 years. 84 years. Ryan O'Reilly talked about the pressure and the expectations of this season and how that factored into what happened. Very interesting comments from a seasoned veteran. This is what he had to say about that.
Down the stretch, you could see once we kind of got eliminated and we were out of it, you kind of feel kind of like a weight was almost lifted, that kind of pressure was off. I know for myself, I kind of felt that they weren't really burdened with this of still getting back into the fight, and because there was so much pressure on us to succeed, the more we lost, the more it kind of weigh on us, and you could just tell, like, everyone felt like playing with the piano on their back. I mean, looked slower and disconnected, and I think once we kind of got rid of that and just went out and played a bit, you could tell things were kind of starting to go our way a bit more and starting to score a few more goals.
When I listened to that, honestly, the first thing I thought of was Loki from Marvel, the Avengers, because he always talks about, I am burdened with glorious purpose. And I'm like, that was the Nashville Predators season. They were burdened with glorious purpose, but like Loki, thwarted, just couldn't seem to take over New York City or the world or anything else, if we're being honest. I think it's so interesting. Ryan O'Reilly, this is a guy who's won the Stanley Cup. This is a guy who has done the things. And it's interesting to me that even the veterans struggled with the pressure of expectation and the disappointment, like just the piano on the back of not being able to get it done and slogging through the season. I just thought that was so interesting because at some point you're like, come on, Ryan O'Reilly, aren't you immune at this point in the in your NHL career to the pressure of expectations? Yeah, friends. No, this year we all learned a little something, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, that stuff is very real. I mean, I think you nailed it. You never become immune to that. I mean, you can get better at handling it, as you mature and develop in the league, but you never don't feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was interesting. Jonathan Marchessault also said something during his media availability that I loved. And he talked about, like, one of the good things about next season is not going to have those kind of expectations. And he's like, it is always better to come in and be the underdog. And, Emma, you and I, we love the West Wing. And they talked about this in the West Wing when the president was preparing for a presidential debate. And it's talk about, if you have high expectations, and this was the Nashville Predators, you can only meet them or you can only fall short. If you meet expectations, it's like, okay, you were supposed to. If you fall short, it's catastrophic. If you go into something with low expectations, you can only meet them, which there's no emotional response to because that was expectations, or you can exceed them, which you're like, okay. Nashville really was backed into a corner with expectations, and they showed up and they were Uncle Fluffy. Like, they showed up this season. They talk about, like, will Jed Bartlett show up and be Jed Bartlett, or will he be Uncle Fluffy? And he showed up. He was not Uncle Fluffy in the debate, but Nashville showed up. They were Uncle Fluffy. Like, the expectations got to them. They need to not have those kind of expectations next season. Whew.
Well, and that's where they thrived last year. There were zero expectations on this team
Yes.
this season.
Yeah.
I mean, that tends to be how things go with Nashville. I mean, they're not going to do well when there's huge expectations on them, at least not right now, because they haven't done enough quite frankly, to earn those high expectations.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not
since
in season. Sure haven't.
well, since 2017, which I'm sorry, but people need to stop bringing that. Let it go. It was
Over
8 years ago.
84 years ago.
84 years ago. Like, stop trying to run it back, or it's
It's not fair.
nothing has happened since then. Like, it's
Yeah.
only because there's a few guys left on the team who were part of that everyone has just clung to this hope of, oh, we can get back there. Let it go. Just
Yeah.
let it go. It's one of my
Let it go.
biggest pet peeves about Nashville, and I'm sure that I will catch heat for saying that, but
You're
gotta
not
let it go.
wrong. You're
Gotta
not
move
wrong.
on. Gotta
Yep.
move on.
Speaking of postseason, Emma, I want to turn the page real quick. What is something like what is the one thing that really jumps out at you about the postseason so far, these first round matchups that we have? Is there anything that you're like, damn, or surprised by, or most interested in?
I mean, a few things. As far as what makes me go, damn, Anthony Stolarz in Toronto.
Damn.
Like, okay, sir, pop off. I mean, you don't know how long that's gonna last, and I don't mean that as a criticism of him. It's just life, it doesn't always work out that way. But
Yeah.
that's obviously goaltending has been a huge thing for Toronto in the playoffs. And I'm like, oh, could they finally have the missing piece? Like, is this finally what's going to get them over the hump? As far as, other series, other teams, I kind of thought St. Louis was going to give Winnipeg a little bit more of a fight.
Yes. And I feel like those games could have gone either way. And I'm interested to see what happens when they get to St. Louis, because I really feel like St. Louis, man, that's a team. And I'm not saying I like it. I'm just saying I'm observing that is a team that was ready to take on the President's Trophy team and slice and dice. And it hasn't happened yet. They got to finish the games. Stressing me out.
Yeah.
Also, LA Kings at home. My gosh, don't ever let anyone tell you home ice doesn't matter. Edmonton, of course, goaltending in Edmonton, that's just a whole conversation. But I just want to point out that Edmonton does not have Matthias Ekholm, and they are on the struggle bus. Coincidence, friends? I don't think so. But also brutal. Like, we talked about this ahead of time. I'm like, LA Kings fans, you are just cutthroat, because when Skinner was out and Pickard was in, they chanted, "We want Skinner." And I'm like, that is some deep mental warfare. Oh, like, you make us saying it's all your fault look like Southern hospitality, you wicked, wicked folks.
Yeah. I mean, LA, they do not lose at home. It doesn't happen.
Yeah,
It's not
they don't.
allowed. So
They look unbeatable. Now they are, again, playing an Edmonton team that, dealing with some injuries and players playing through injuries and missing some pieces and goaltending. But LA they look really good in this first round, I think.
yeah.
Not happy about it, but they do. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to kind of turn the page. We're going to talk about what the younger players had to say. It was a very interesting and challenging season for players like Fedor Svechkov, Luke Evangelista, Zachary Leroux. We're going to hear from them on what this season experience was like for them and what they take away from it. Very interesting conversations with them, especially as we've shared what the veterans have to say. So make sure you come back tomorrow for that. And again, we're still waiting to hear from Barry Trotz, y'all. Still waiting, as they say in Billy Elliot the musical. Still waiting. Before we log off on this Thursday show, Emma, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
Yes, you can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan. You can find my work at the Hockey News, including every night during the playoffs. Live, we are doing a live show every night during the playoffs, talking about the games from that night. So I share them all on my socials, so make sure to tune in.
It's a lot of fun. I was checking y'all out. It's really fun to watch them live. You can find me on social media at @AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that is going to do it for this Thursday episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again so much for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back tomorrow hearing from the young sprouts. We will see you then.